Hey everyone, it's Heather Nichols, and today we're going to do stamping with liquid watercolor. This past August, I created this card featuring a really pretty fall wreath that I stamped with the foliage background stamp, and I also did my sentiment with the hand-lettered alpha stamp. I'm going to show you how to recreate that by stamping with liquid watercolors. There's several colors that I'll use to do that. You'll need a water brush. An eraser is a great tool to have to do this technique. We're going to embellish our cards with some sequins and some burlap twine. And then we're going to do all of our stamping on watercolor cardstock, and I'll use toffee for my card base. One side of the watercolor cardstock has a rougher texture and the other side has a smoother texture. I really prefer to use the smoother side when I'm doing stamping. You get more successful results and crisper images that way. I'm setting up the foliage background stamp in my MISTI by just setting it in that upper corner, and then I'm closing the MISTI to pick the stamp up. And then I put a little adhesive on the back side of my cardstock, and I'm just laying the cardstock right on my stamp just to kind of guide it into the right position. Once I close my MISTI, I'll just make sure that everything looks straight and it's got adhesive on the back, so everything should stay in place. Next, I'm going to take my liquid watercolor and I'm putting it in a palette that I have, just adding a few drops in there. I'll use a water brush to pick up the liquid watercolor and I'll paint it directly onto the stamp where I want the color to go. Once I have the color on the stamp how I'd like it, I'll close my MISTI and stamp with it. I'm using the watercolor pretty concentrated so I get a really nice definition of color. If you find that the color beads up onto your stamp, use an eraser and just rub it over the surface of your stamp. It's not going to wreck your stamp, it's just going to rough things up just a bit so that watercolor has something to hold on to. In between each color, I'm not washing my stamp. It actually gives me a good idea of where I have and have not added color to my image. For this fall version of the wreath, I'm using pea pod, lime zest, candy corn, and pineapple liquid watercolor. For the holiday version of my wreath, I'm using pea pod, lime zest, and I'm adding in chocolate truffle liquid watercolor. I'm going to stamp this the same exact way that I did the fall wreath, just using these three colors of liquid watercolor. I'm adding a few splatters to my wreath designs by picking up some liquid watercolor onto my water brush and then just tapping the brush over my finger to add spatters and speckles all around my wreaths. On the holiday card, I wanted to add some berries, and so I'm masking the center of the wreath using one of the stencils from the Masking Stencils collection, the small circle, and then I'm layering just the berry stencil from the Modern Holly Layered Stencil collection right over the top. I'll use Cherry Pop ink and a blender brush, and yep, this is the first time I've used my red blender brush, and I'm going to add the Cherry Pop ink all around the wreath design. I added sentiments to each of my wreaths using the clear hand-lettered alpha stamp set. I customized the word that I added to the center of each one, and then I used the small uppercase letters that are a part of the set to complete the sentiments on each of the cards. To finish off my card designs, I wrapped burlap twine around each card a couple of times and tied it in a bow. I used multi-matte medium to add a few sequins, and I attached each of the stamped layers to a toffee card base. I hope you enjoyed the projects that I shared today on how to stamp with liquid watercolor. You can find all of the supplies to create this project at the Tailored Expressions web store at tailoredexpressions.com. Thanks so much for joining me, everybody, and I'll see you next time.